What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Movie Battleground. My name is Chad Webb, and I am your host. If people missed it, check out the second Wizarding World exhibition match that aired this week in honor of the release of Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. I know I'm excited for that one. The match and the movie. The winner of this match will, well, be a big baller shot caller, but will also move on to face the normal Battleground host and producer, Aaron Canole, in a number one contenders match. Sounds exciting as hell. Yeah, so today we have two great competitors. I've watched them and I would be nervous as hell to play them, but they have to play each other. So we'll see how that goes. We have Jeremy Adams and Jay Burnz today. Jay returns after a tough loss to a current champion, Joe Farrelly, but has strong wins against both Amaru Moses and Henry Sanchez, the title challenger to build upon. So we'll go ahead and actually introduce the first competitor, and that is Jay Burnz. What's up, buddy?
First time, long time, bud.
I forgot to mention your record. You have 2 wins and 1 loss. Wow, it's a good record.
I still think my loss is bullshit, but
Probably,
I'm ready.
But how are you feeling about going up against Jeremy?
Oh man, you know what? Jeremy has always been a soft-spoken individual, and I have been a little bit more brash. So to see the way that this is going to unfold is one of those things that, like, I'm not 100% sure how this is going to go. I'm going to try to give him a little deference and let him get his word in edgewise when it is not advantageous for me to just shout over him. So yeah, no, I can't wait. This is going to be a lot of fun. I've never seen Jeremy's debate style before. So this is one of those ones where I'm going in and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going up against. Whereas I've been debating in leagues like this for a while. So everybody knows what it is that I am capable of.
Absolutely. Yeah, I won't give too much away about Jeremy, but I know he can definitely bring the passion. So sounds like you're ripping ready to go. Have you, you've been able to, use your prep time wisely?
Sure, let's go with that because I always do so well when I prep.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and take that answer, and I'm going to kick you out and bring out your competitor. Good luck. All right. So we are going to go on to bring out the second competitor. Jeremy is back after being upset by Madeeh Ur Rehman in the semifinals, but his 3-1 record with his 2 knockouts still make him a top 5 player in this league. Well, I just said what his record was, so I'll bring him out. He is Jeremy, the Atom. Adams.
Hello.
How's it going, Jeremy? How you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. I'm a little nervous. The last couple matches that I played were tough. They were against some really tough competitors, and I know tonight is no difference. And it's going to be a tough one. I At least I have the benefit of knowing that Jay hasn't watched my other matches because he seems to think I'm the soft-spoken guy when I debate, and I'm actually a shouter. So it'll be interesting to see. At least I've got that going for me. But yeah, I'm a little nervous. But however it goes, it's going to be exciting to see. And if I lose, at least I don't have to go into a big tournament match right away. So there's always the bright side of things.
That's absolutely right. When you're good and you just kind of keep winning, you got to go up against tougher and tougher people. That's just how
Yep.
it is. If you want to go up against someone that you could just beat real easily, lose. That's my advice for you. But yeah, I wasn't gonna say anything for Jay, because I've definitely seen you yell quite a bit. So I'm interested to see how this is gonna go with both of you on screen, especially when it's something you're super passionate about. So, have you been able to use your prep time wisely?
I've been busy, but I have thought about each of the questions and hopefully come up with some interesting takes. And that's always the most fun about Battleground is how you can look at each movie, each topic, and try to bring something unique to it. So it's always a fun part of it, and hopefully at least at the very least I'll have some interesting things to say today.
That's absolutely right. All right. Well, we're gonna drop you in the back and get this show on the road. And good luck to you. All right. So now I'm going to go through the match rules. Movie Battleground is a best of 5 or first to 3 points will declare the winner. Each round of debate is worth 1 point. If one competitor earns the first 3 points in a row, that is a victory by KO. If it is a 2-2 draw at the end of 4 rounds, we go to the tiebreaker blind rounds. More on that if we get there. Rounds 1 to 4, competitors were given the questions ahead of the match and had time to prep their answers. The first stage of a question is the 60-second opening. The second stage of a question is the 2-minute expansion / rebuttal period. The third stage of the question is the 4-minute open debate discussion. The fourth stage of a question is the 60-second closing. Then, after the regulation time, the 3 judges will be brought on screen, during which they'll give their judgment of who won the round. And we have in the back for you Antonio Chavez, John Marr, and Sean Sandberg. But yeah, so Jeremy is the favorite, and he chose to go first on questions 2 and 4. So Jay will go first on questions number 1 and 3. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them on screen. Drop myself out. All right, question 1 is actually a replay question. It was previously used in the Ryan Permison versus Madeeh Ur Rehman match, in which both of Martin Campbell's Bond films were chosen and thus were unavailable for today's match. So we will go ahead and ask this question right now. It is, what is the best film directed by Martin Campbell that's not a Bond film? Looking to hear some interesting choices here today, and Jay is going to go first on this question. So we will go ahead and bring that timer back up, and we will start it as soon as he begins speaking.
We all know the correct answer to this question is Martin Campbell's Green Lantern. But that's not what we are talking about today. We are actually talking about a movie from the 90s, and a movie that I think a lot of people don't really recognize as a movie that is directed by Martin Campbell, because it doesn't seem like it's something that he would do. But once you realize it is, you're like, yeah, this could definitely be a Martin Campbell movie. And I'm going with The Mask of Zorro here. The Mask of Zorro is by far probably one of the better quote unquote comic book movies that we have gotten in the last 30 years. And I know that's going up against the likes of like the Avengers and all of this. This movie has everything I need for a movie about a good guy or a bad guy who's trying to turn his life around and go good. The Mask of Zorro is my answer.
All right, great there. So now we're going to go into Jeremy's first opening minute. But first, let me reset this thing. I think it just goes into a new one. Okay. All right. So, yeah, Jeremy, sorry about that. When you begin speaking, so will your time.
So, a little history on Martin Campbell. He is a British filmmaker, and he actually was first known for a miniseries that he worked on back in the 80s called Edge of Darkness. And this was a serious British police revenge sort of series that he worked on. And then because of that, he got noticed. He ended up going into the Hollywood system, making, Bond movies, the blockbuster movies. And then the aforementioned Green Lantern happened and kind of knocked Martin back a peg, and he had to kind of reassess. So he went back to his roots. He did another remake of Edge of Darkness with Mel Gibson, and that kind of got him back into making more serious, dramatic, sort of themed films. And that led him to 2017 when he made a film called The Foreigner, which stars Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan. And this is a movie that really shows a reinvigorated Martin Campbell making a serious movie, kind of a post-Taken revenge thriller, but it has a lot on its mind. It's got great performances, and it's one of his most unique and powerful films.
And that's time. All right, great job, great choices. So we're going to get into the 2-minute expansion. All right, time set up, add that. All right, so Jay, your 2 minutes starts when you begin speaking.
Zorro gives me everything I want from a movie Especially if we're going to talk about a revenge story, because at its core, Zorro is the revenge story that Martin Campbell has directed the best. This is probably one of those movies, again, a lot of people forget about. A lot of people remember, Antonio Banderas in a movie. A lot of people might not go to this one first. Most people will probably go to Puss in Boots, which, we're not going to talk about. I do like the fact that this is, like I said in my opening, a movie where you're not necessarily the greatest of person, but you get this redemption throughout the entire story, because Marietta does not start out as a good guy. He starts out as, a down on his luck Ute, and then becomes a scammer with his brother. His brother dies, and he wants to go out. He wants revenge. That's pure. That's plain and simple. That's laid out in front of you. I'm fine with that. I don't need an overly complicated story with a plot that drops a character halfway through. I am here for this movie. This is probably one of the better constructed movies that I have seen by Martin Campbell that isn't a Bond film. And seeing as we can't talk about Bond, I'm going to try not to. There's really not a lot that needs to be said about Zorro. Whether we want to talk about, oh my goodness, Catherine Zeta-Jones in this movie did a phenomenal job. Never would have cast her as a Latina because she's Welsh. But we're, again, not going to talk about that. There's a lot to this movie. The construction of this movie, the direction of this movie works really well for me. And it's probably one of the better movies. It's probably the best movie directed by Martin Campbell that isn't a Bond film. The Mask of Zorro.
All right. Great. Perfect timing there. So now we're going to go on to Jeremy, but let me get this timer started. All right. So the timer will start, Jeremy, for your 2 minutes when you begin speaking. I forgot to throw his title up. So I'm going to throw that up as well. So just in case you forgot what it was. All right. So whenever you begin speaking, Jeremy, your time will start.
So to kind of talk about it again, The Foreigner came out in a time that was post the movie Taken. The movie Taken kind of changed the landscape a little bit of what action thrillers were. You got Liam Neeson, you've got older actors in a lot of these films. So the filmmakers found this book from the 90s that was about an Asian man in England who basically, the movie starts with there's a terrorist bombing by an Irish terrorist group, and his daughter is killed, and this man's whole life has changed. And it's a movie that's got some of the, he's going to go on a rampage. He's going to go after the guys that killed his daughter. But right away, it isn't Taken. It isn't this fantasy where, he's going to save his daughter and be this like superhero. This is a guy who's very wounded. You don't know his backstory at first, but he's been through a lot. He's in a country that isn't his own. Jackie Chan just brings such pathos to this. And it starts with him going to the police, going to the politicians, trying to get some sort of justice, some sort of answers, and he can't get that. And at that point, the movie brilliantly pivots to this Pierce Brosnan character, who's a politician. He used to be involved in the Irish terrorism back in the day, and now he's kind of got a better image going for him and everything. But you quickly learn he is embroiled in some of this stuff, largely because he's been with a woman. He's had a mistress on the side, and we find out she's very much involved in this new terrorist group. And it's a movie that really has a lot on its mind. It has to do about people who are not from the country that they're in, that aren't taken seriously, who have to go above and beyond to try to get justice. It's about how terrorism lingers into later generations, and the sins of the past keep reemerging. It's got brilliant performances, and it's Martin Campbell talking about something he really knows from England, from Ireland. This is something that is really true to him.
All right, nice. That's time. So we're going to move on to the 4-minute open debate. Time will begin whenever anyone starts speaking.
Jer, I think one of my biggest issues that I have with what you said is this isn't Taken. This isn't a man who knows how to kill people. This isn't like an individual who is of an advanced age taking on a system in which he can't possibly win against. You literally just laid out the Taken movies. I get it. The Foreigner is great, and had they stuck with Quan a little bit more instead of trying to humanize Pierce Brosnan's character, who is an authentic IRA member, quote unquote authentic IRA member, I think it would have been a little bit better. I think your movie is just a little bit too late in the era of filmmaking that it came out in. I think had it come out in the early 2000s, not in 2017, it would have been better.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Taken movies, you know, you had the first one, and then you had the sequels, and then more Liam Neeson doing stuff, and they got more and more ridiculous.
Mhm.
And The Foreigner is a film that came a few years later that was able to look back at Taken and see that, you know, there was something serious there. There was something on the mind of a movie like that. It's able
So
to
what
deal
you're
with
saying is
serious.
that this is the best Taken film.
What I'm saying is that this is a movie that was able to come after, you know, this Taken era, but be a really serious drama with have the trappings of a Taken movie, but actually have great characters and have issues that it dealt with. It took that Taken mythos, and you got Jackie Chan, and he has a couple great, amazing action sequences where I think it's awesome that he's a guy who can be wounded. He's a guy who suffers in this movie. He's a guy who we find out, you know, this isn't the first kid he's lost. He's lost other people in Vietnam. He's gone through so much, and it makes the intrigue, the terrorism, the bombings that go on in this movie so much more interesting, and you're more involved. And the fact that Pierce Brosnan is a character that isn't he's quote unquote the antagonist of this movie, but he's just a guy who's trying to turn a new page, but he's still got his foot in his Irish trappings. He's not hanging out with the right people. He's being pulled in different directions. I think he's a really interesting character, and it's about these two guys who are later in life who've made decisions, and they have to deal with it. And when the two of them come together at the end, I think he basically forces Pierce Brosnan to make a final choice about everything that he's done. I think it's more powerful and more interesting than what you would generally get in a Taken movie. And I think that's why, and Martin Campbell started off with stories like this, and this is him returning to that. And I feel a lot of Martin Campbell in this. I feel like the Zorro movie was in the Martin Campbell director for hire era. I don't feel as much of him in that film.
So what you're looking for is a revenge story. You're looking for interesting characters, and you're looking for a plot that can grasp you. That's exactly what Zorro is. Whereas you have literally just said that your movie is essentially a Taken ripoff that wouldn't have come out and been done the way that it was if it wasn't for a movie like Taken. You say you have Jackie Chan doing these, you say he has a couple of great action scenes in this. That's fine. Jackie Chan is not a great actor when it comes to being an American, like acting in an American film. It doesn't translate well. And this may or may not be an American film, but it is a westernized film. It doesn't work for me in the sense that he does not translate well to a Western audience. The fact of the matter is that they split this entire thing between the two of them, and they went with the uninteresting character for a majority of this film. They went with Pierce Brosnan instead of actually sticking with Jackie Chan, going through that and him trying to get the revenge that he
I will say that you say the Mask of Zorro is a great revenge filler. I think there's elements of it that haven't aged well that I'll get into, and I'll also say it doesn't have a compelling villain, where my film does.
All right, and that's time. Cool. So now we are going to go back up to Jay for his closing. Let me get that timer up. All right. And then, time will begin when Jay begins speaking.
We have only barely touched on the surface of what my movie, or why my movie is great. Don Diego de la Vega is probably one of the greater mentor characters in 90s action movies. If we're talking about this just from a subjective perspective, he is up there with the Obi-Wan Kenobis. I know, not 90s movie, but we didn't really talk a lot about Anthony Hopkins. The entire cast of this movie makes it. whereas we're only focused on 2 characters in yours, and we don't focus on the interesting character in your movie. Whereas we can focus on multiple characters in my film, and it's still incredibly engaging. Does it age well? No. Do most films age well? Absolutely not. That's not an argument that should even be brought up. Most movies from 30 years ago don't age well. This movie has aged better than most, and it's still one of the most entertaining Martin Campbell movies ever made. The Mask of Zorro is the best Martin Campbell film, not a Bond film.
Oh, right. All right, so now we're going to move on to Jeremy's final minute and when he begins speaking.
The Mask of Zorro was written by Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott. They worked on the film. They went on to work on Pirates of the Caribbean, the Curse of the Black Pearl. I feel that is a movie that I enjoy more. It has a stronger villain. I feel The Mask of Zorro, having white actors like Catherine Zeta-Jones and Anthony Hopkins, and especially Stuart Wilson, who's a very bland villain, kind of hurt the movie. The movie is pretty long. It's well over 2 hours. I don't think that it really needs the length that it has. And again, this movie was originally going to be made by, they went out to Robert Rodriguez. I think Robert Rodriguez would have cast a more authentic cast. He would have made a movie that really held up more. He worked, a lot with Antonio Banderas. I think Martin Campbell, he was that director for hire. He focused on the action, but I think there's a little bit of heart missing in that film. And in my film, like I said, it's got things on its mind. It has something to say about terrorism. It resonates in a way, and I think it will age well. It will age very well.
All right, perfectly timed there. Move that. All right, we're going to go ahead and great job, guys. We're going to go ahead and remove the competitors, bring out the judges. All right, let me, I don't really have any facts to check here, but let me 1 second real quick. Making sure that anything I have to go over. No, there's not. So, yep. So we'll go ahead and start with Antonio Chavez on this one. Whenever you, or Ant-Man, if you prefer, whenever you're ready, give us your thoughts on the match, who you won, why, what points sold you, and do it in like 30 seconds or less if you can.
All right. So yeah, both guys made some good points. As someone who's seen both movies, it was interesting to hear both perspectives. I had to give it to Jay because the main points that really resonated with me were the fact that he said that even though he's one of my favorites, Jackie Chan is not a good actor. Good point. Even in the fact that also cast is what mattered most. Above just 2 characters in one film, I do feel like cast matters a lot. So that's where he got me on that one. So yeah, I give Jay the point.
All right, great. So Jay gets 1 point, and we're going to move on to John to hear his opinion. Same thing. Keep it to like 30 seconds or less if you can.
Easy. I also went with Jay, and Antonio stole both of the things I was going to say, so that actually is kind of rough. So let me think of a third thing to say. I always find in a general like debate when you spend a lot of time on like one side of the field, like defending one movie, it kind of swings the favor of the debate. And they spent a lot of that early thing with Jeremy defending himself, and I felt Jeremy never went on the offense either against Mask of Zorro until the very end. So Jay.
All right, very good. Well, Jay's going to get that point. We're going to kick the judges out. Thank you very much. We'll get to Sean's opinion next round. All right. And then let's bring the competitors back out because we're going to get into the second question. Let me find that second question. All right.
That was a really good round, Jeremy. It was a really good round. I thought you had me, buddy. You had some really solid points there. You're muted, buddy.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
Oh, of course.
All right. Great camaraderie there. So now we're going to bring out the second question, and it is, if one of Frank Capra's movies had to be remade today, which film should it be? Oh, man. All right. So we're going classics here today. Let me get that out. This out. The timer. All right, so we're going to actually start with Jeremy this time. And so let me rewind this clock for you. Okay. All right, so time will begin.
There's a whole lot of Photoshop in this episode.
Definitely. When you begin speaking, Jeremy, so will your time.
So, for those who don't know, Frank Capra is one of my favorite directors. He's from the golden age of Hollywood, started in the 20s, kept making movies into the 60s. He's mainly known for films that are uplifting and that kind of dealt with political and social issues. One of the films he's most known for is It's a Wonderful Life. But Frank Capra, he had a long career, and he actually remade a couple of his own films. He remade a movie called Broadway Bill and a movie called Riding High. But the movies that he remade were kind of the lesser ones, the ones that he felt he could do better. And I feel like there are films in Frank Capra's career that aren't the jewels, aren't the great, aren't the iconic It's a Wonderful Life films. And I think that there are some really interesting ones. And one that I kind of landed on is State of the Union, which is a film that came out in 1948. It was based on a popular play, and it starred Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, one of the films that they did together. And it's a really interesting political film that I think could really be improved in a remake.
All right, perfect. So now we will get to Jay's time, Jay's opening when he begins speaking.
Me and Jeremy have chosen very similar movies, and I think for very dissimilar reasons. Jeremy chose State of the Union, and I will get into that in the 2 minutes, and I'll get into that in the 4-minute debate. I chose Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, with the political atmosphere being what it is, with individuals who are abusing their power, with the filibuster being in the shape that it is now. I think we need a movie like this to not only speak to people, but just as a remembrance of what we used to be and what we could be again. And that is a power that was for the people. I thought of a movie that Capra did that could be remade and would still speak to not only the older generation, but the new generation as well. And I think that Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is probably that film. That's why this is my favorite, and this is the one that deserves a remake.
All right. Great job there. So we are going to get into the 2-minute expansions. All right. So Jeremy, your 2 minutes will start when you begin speaking.
So yes, State of the Union, it's a film about an industrialist played by Spencer Tracy. And he's basically a guy who had a lot of ideals and things, but he's kind of gone astray a bit. And he's actually having an affair with a woman who is involved in politics. And she actually gets him, along with some other people, to run for president. And so the whole movie is he has to go back to his wife, played by Katharine Hepburn. And of course, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn had, big history together, both off and on screen. And it's about her coming back to be the trophy wife to support him in this campaign. And the movie really gets into the nitty gritty of, he's got ideals, but he's getting pulled in all these different directions, and the special interests get involved, and he's completely become somebody that he doesn't want to be. And it's about him rediscovering the love for his wife. And this movie is not, I don't think it's one of the better Tracy and Hepburn movies, but it's got really interesting ideas. And I actually have a pitch. I see this could be a remake that Denzel Washington could do. He could star in, he could direct, he could get Viola Davis to play the wife. And I think this could be one of those movies that really has great acting, really has something to say, but it's really at its heart, it's a romance. And I think that the fact that the politics in this are very cynical, and it's really about a man rediscovering himself, people can really accept it more. And they get, you want to have ideals and things, but politics is a dirty game. And I think that makes it a movie that will be interesting, and that, people from all sides can kind of see, how dirty it can get. And then just quickly about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, I think that so much in that movie that resonated at the time is going to be hard to translate now. I think the fact that the filibuster is a heroic thing in that movie, it would be kind of harder to get across now. And there's a lot of subplots and things in that movie, and the fact that it's so iconic as James Stewart, you can't really replace it.
Whoops, I was muted. All right, so that's time. Now we're going to go on to Jay's 2 minutes when he begins speaking.
There's a very specific reason why this movie needs to be remade, because we need to be told, we need to be shown what American politics was, what American politics could be, and the things that we should stand for. There is a reason why this movie is as iconic as it is, and it has been taught in schools for the last 80 years. There's a reason why you get this movie told to you in civics classes, in ethics classes, in government classes. This is a movie that desperately needs a remake, especially with the way that the political atmosphere is changing nowadays. We need to be able to stand against bullshit and be able to call out liars when liars need to be called out. This is a movie about an everyman doing something that he doesn't want to do, not a movie about an industrialist or a capitalist who is being controlled by dark money and being forced into something that he is wishy-washy about. My movie is actually something that needs to be done. Your movie has already been done. Your movie will continue to be done, and it will continue to get worse and worse every single time it happens. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is the Capra movie, and you can bring up the iconic actor all you want, but there have been iconic roles throughout history that have been taken over and been given the due deference and due diligence, and they are good. They're not the greatest, but that's because people are biased about it, and they go in and like, oh, I expect you to be as good as this person. Will it happen? Probably not. But will it change the tone? Will it change the subject of the matter at hand? Absolutely not. And with time, it will grow and grow and grow. Whereas the movie that you've chosen, we are taking a turn. The tides, both left and right, are going against capitalism at this point in time. You're trying to create a movie about a machine, whereas my movie is actually standing against, and for lack of a better term, raging against the machine. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington deserves to be remade.
All right, nice. Now we're going to start the Foreman open debate whenever anybody starts speaking.
Again, your movie, it's there. I mean, if Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it exists. It's in its greatest form. He completely did everything that he needed to do with that film at the time that it was made. But it does take place in a different era, and it is a film that you can look at as a film from the 30s. You can buy into James Stewart's character. You can buy into the fact that he's got a Cub Scout troop like helping him, and all these little boys that believe in him, and kind of like these 30s little things in the movie. But to make a movie today, to remake a film, from
almost
that
like
era,
grassroots politics, which is something that is still happening, and it has become a major portion of the individuals who are being elected nowadays. You can't sit here and say, oh no, go ahead.
You need to be able to really buy into the movie, and the idea that you could have a Mr. Smith as Jimmy Stewart played him today, and that everything that we know about politics, everything on social media, I just think it's a bigger ask for an audience, and it's not going to have the impact that it had in the original film. Whereas my movie, you're saying, oh, it's a bad movie, a bad message about capitalism. No, it's about a guy who's a capitalist.
Oh, I didn't say it was a bad movie about capitalism. I said it's an indictment of. I said it's an indictment of capitalists,
exactly,
which is something that we are at this point in time in our political atmosphere rallying against. Bro, we don't need.
There's a lot of people in this country that are not. There's a lot of people that support the capitalists. And
there's not a lot of people who support capitalists. There are people who are in power who don't support the movement against them. But what you're talking about is an individual who has money, who is literally being forced into this position. Nobody wants that. That's the reason why grassroots capitalism works. And if you're talking about these small little groups like Boy Scouts and all of this other bullshit that James Stewart has to go through in this film, that's what we are seeing. We see it in people like Bernie Sanders. We see this happen. Yeah, you're adding a little bit more of an era to it with new information and new technology, but I think that is what would grasp the audience, because there are different ways to combat this. Whereas your movie is literally already been remade. It was head of state. It wasn't the greatest movie of all time. I don't need another remake. And if you're going to try to remake it after 50 years and then it didn't work, and then you're going to try to remake it 20 years after that, pass.
Yeah, but my movie, that was a very different kind of take on the material. This would be getting more to the core of the story, and it is a movie.
The only thing they changed about that movie was the influence and then the position of the character who was running for president.
But you can get to the core. This is a movie that it really you can buy into. You understand these characters, and this is a guy
I'm
who,
not backing
he's this
Elon
rich.
Musk, bro.
No, but you're not supposed to. This isn't a movie about a guy who we're supposed to look up to him. This is about a guy who realizes what he is wrong in a way. This is about a guy who ends up connecting with the word. He did well. The end of the movie is he's got to stop, and he's got to listen.
That's because
to
the
his
movie
wife.
came to an end.
Yeah, it's the end. He gives it up at the end because that's what the movie is about. It's about a guy who is drawn into politics. He thinks he has ideals, but what he stands for isn't really where it's at. It's all these other things around him.
The man isn't even drawn into politics because he wants to be a part of the political spectrum. The man is drawn into politics because he's pushed into it.
That is what we see that in politics.
There's no politician out here today who would do that, though. They are there for the money. They are there for the power, especially people who come from big money families.
He has a great speech at the end of the movie where he says he did get pulled into
Nobody remembers your movie or that speech.
Well, that's why he needs a remake.
All right, that's time. All right, so we're going to go back to Jeremy for his closing argument. So time will begin when he begins speaking. Mr.
Smith Goes to Washington is a great film. It has a great message, and it stands for all time. But you don't want to go back and remake these great classic films, and especially when what happens in that film with the filibuster and with everything that goes on, it just doesn't quite play in today's politics. My movie really does play to today's politics. It's about a guy who gets drawn into politics. He thinks he's going to do something good, but he stopped his wife, who he's abandoned, and the adultery that we see in with these political figures is something that we can so relate to. And if you get a great actor like Denzel Washington and Viola Davis, and the two of them reconnecting and then realizing that they can't do this isn't where it's at. They need to stop. They need to expose all of the people. And the awesome speech that Spencer Tracy gave at the end of that movie, I could see Denzel Washington giving it, and it would resonate. It's true. It resonates with what's going on today. And this is, you need to remake movies that can be better.
And that's time. All right. Let's get this done. Okay. And so as soon as Jay begins speaking, so will his final minute of this round.
The filibuster would work in this movie for me, especially if we're not even going to take it verbatim. We're remaking this movie, and this is about a movie that needs a remake. The filibuster has been abused on both sides in the political spectrum for the last forever and a day. I think if you actually use the filibuster in the way that it was meant to be used in its originality, and the way that it was used in Capra's original vision of this movie, it would work. The simple fact of the matter is nobody cares about industrialists. Nobody cares about capitalists. You can sit there and say that there are people who do. You're right, but they are people who are looking out for their own gains. I want a movie remake that is about looking out for the little guy. That means that I need somebody who comes from not so well-off means, an individual who does come from a grassroots to be able to make that message. And this is the movie that needs to be remade from Capra's oeuvre.
All right, that's time. Great job, guys. I'm going to drop you out. And I'm going to bring out the judges in a different order this time. Okay, so this time we're going to begin with John. Who'd you vote for? Why? And keep it to 30 seconds or around that.
It's really devolved into like a huge political debate, but and I enjoyed it. So I think it was another great round. I'm going to go with Jay again, only because I really do buy that bringing Mr. Smith Goes to Washington into the modern time could have a very, very unique twist, whereas State of the Union still I think would be good, but I think I'd rather see Mr. Smith Goes to Washington be released.
All right, and now we're going to go to Sean. Who'd you vote for? What was the point that sold you? And keep it to around 30 seconds.
This was to kind of echo what the top round to judge. I really appreciate it from everybody. I think I'm going to go with Jeremy on this. I really loved his pitch of Denzel Washington directing, starring in this. I think Exactly. That's kind of a big point. Yeah.
All right, Sean, you are cutting out a little bit there, but we understood like most of what you said there. You voted for Jeremy, so now we're going to move on to the tiebreaker, which is Antonio. So Antonio, who'd you vote for? What's the point that sold you? And keep it around 30 seconds.
So, considering I've never seen either movie, I was just trying to listen to both guys and how they would describe their movies that they chose. And it was pretty well deadlocked until the open debate, and then I felt like Jay was on the offensive, but not in an overreaching way or obnoxious way. It was more like even more, again, just I don't know, his ideas were innovative, and just the fact that he said that it was taught in schools resonated with me, because then it applies to like the whole idea of a remake that maybe that also can be taught in schools. So that's why I gave it to Jay, and just great all around.
All right, great job. Thank you, judges. I'll move you to the back. I'll bring the competitors back out. Jay now has 2 points, but match is far from over. We have another question.
You scared the hell out of me with that, Jeremy. Oh my God, dude. I wanted to see your movie.
Great job, Jay.
Definitely. All right, so now we're going to go to the third question, and that is, which Kevin Smith film that never got a direct sequel should get one? Very interesting question. All right, so now I'm going to bring that timer back up. Gotta rewind clock. All right, now we're going to start with Jay this time. So, Jay, when you begin speaking, so will your time for your first minute.
The Kevin Smith film that never got a direct sequel that should get one is by far probably Kevin Smith's weirdest film. And I'm not talking about Tusk. Tusk is weird. Yoga Hosers is weird in their own respects. I think the weirdest Kevin Smith film that, I know not part of it, but I think the Kevin Smith film that deserves a sequel is Red State. It is the one movie where he actually tried to tackle certain things, and he's always been a little bit antagonistic of the church and churches in general. But this was an indictment of oh my goodness, I am forgetting the church, and I'm so glad that I am, because I don't want to remember their name. The Westboro Baptist Church. Damn it, I remembered it. This movie did not go as deep as it could have, and I think that we deserve a sequel to this and no other movie.
All right, that is time. All right, and now we're going to go on to Jeremy's opening when he begins speaking, so will his time.
One of the things I love about Kevin Smith is how he's kind of really opened himself up in his movies and continued to give us personal stories here and there throughout his career as he gotten older. I think the best example of this is Clerks 2, where he revisited the characters from Clerks, and we got to see where they were in their lives, and a lot of it reflected kind of where Kevin Smith was. So for me, I chose Chasing Amy, which was one of his signature 90s films with Ben Affleck and Jason Lee. So now it's going to be, my idea would be now in the modern time, we revisit those characters, and the seeds were actually planted in a couple scenes in the movie Jay and Silent Bob Get Old. And I think there were some great little nuggets there that you can really build on. And I actually have an idea for where the story could go, where we would revisit some really great characters from one of his most penetrating films, but deal with new issues and deal with them from where Kevin Smith and Ben Affleck and the different people are in their lives now.
All right, that's time. And so now we're, oh, crap. All right, so now we're going to get into the 2-minute expansion. Let me bring this up. All right, so as soon as Jay begins talking, his time will start.
Red State was probably the very first Kevin Smith movie where he stepped out of his own comfort zone to actually write a movie that was compelling. You have terrifying characters in this. Michael Parks is probably the most terrifying villain I've seen in a movie in the 2010s, and it happens to be in a movie that nobody has seen. And I think one of the reasons why nobody has seen it is because it got a very small release. And the people who did go to see it were like, "Oh, we're going to see a Kevin Smith movie. This is going to be a Clerks. This is going to be a Mallrats. This is going to be a Dogma movie." And that's not what we got here. We got, like I've said before, we got a very hard look at religious extremism from the perspective of a director who has grown up with religion as a part of who he was. He was a Catholic for the longest time. And he saw the persecution that happened there, and then he created a movie like Dogma. I think this is the more realistic version of a movie like Dogma, but this is the movie that deserves a sequel because there are so many other facets and so many other outlets in which you could go to and choose. Even with the unfortunate death of Michael Parks, RIP, by the way, you can still have one of the other members of this church, or even John Goodman himself, take over as the main character, and you can continue it forward because there are so many cults out there. This movie makes sense to me as a movie that deserves a sequel but never got one because it's the most coherent story he has told that doesn't involve Jay and Silent Bob. Red State is the movie that deserves a sequel. Kevin Smith. I yield my 6 seconds.
All right. Well, we're going to let that count down anyways. And all right. So, Jeremy, your time, I'll give you that extra second. Your time will begin when you begin speaking.
So the moment in Jay and Silent Bob Get Old that I seized on is there's a scene where Ben Affleck comes back playing Holden, the character from Chasing Amy, and we kind of find out a little bit about where he is now. He has a daughter now, and that's kind of the center of his world. And we also get that he's basically doing the comic Chasing Amy. They're making a Netflix series of it. So my idea for where this story would go is now he's working on the Netflix series. In my pitch, he's now a single dad, and he's basically got to reconnect with Banky, the Jason Lee character from the original movie. And we know from the original movie that there was something going on there with Banky. He had some feelings for Ben Affleck's character that were kind of unquieted, and maybe even some sexual tension between the two of them. And I think where I could see a story like this going is the two of them reconnect, and it actually some romantic feelings come up. And this is something that Ben Affleck's character would really struggle with because he's, a little bit of an older guy and embracing, a different part of himself, a different aspect of sexuality, I think would be something that you might have to struggle with. But I think that, there might be some real love between those guys. And I think that Kevin Smith is, he's done. The original Chasing Amy was inspired by what his friend Scott Mosier went through back in the 90s. And I think that he could really draw on his relationship with his friend Malcolm, who he does a lot of podcasts with, who's a gay gentleman. And they could really collaborate on something that could be really funny, really touching, and really kind of take the stink off of some of Chasing Amy, which I think as it dealt with gay characters in the day, there were some attitudes and things that don't quite stand the test of time. And I think this is a way to kind of look at some of that stuff and look at it with a modern eye and kind of take it inward. And I think it could be really funny, and I think it would be a great place for Ben Affleck's character to go. And like there's seeds there. There's somewhere to go. Red State is a movie that's very singular. It's a one-off film. I think it's a really good film, but I don't really see those seeds for a sequel.
And that's time. All right. So now we get to go into the 4-minute open debate. So that time will start when anyone begins speaking.
So, Jeremy, 2 things really quick right off the bat. One, you keep saying Jay and Silent Bob Get Old. You were thinking of the podcast
reboot. Reboot. I know
it reboot. Is Jay and Silent Bob reboot. And yep. 2, Kevin Smith has said multiple times, not only on Hollywood Babylon, but Jay and Silent Bob Get Old and every one of the other podcasts that he does. He is not the correct voice to make that sequel. I understand the question as it being a sequel that Kevin Smith is directly involved in. I don't think that I'm wrong in that because we are talking about a Kevin Smith property here, and without him attached to it, at that point in time, it is just a reboot a reboot, and nobody's talking about that. My movie ends on a cliffhanger. Your movie literally gets its ending in another movie. We get to see that. We get to know during Holden McNeil's entire fucking monologue that Amy's going to do well on Netflix. Finger cuts. They don't have a name for it, but he spends his entire day chasing Amy. I think that that's about as good of a closure as you're going to get with that film.
Yeah, but I would say, Kevin Smith's changed his mind on stuff before. He said he's not going to do a Clerk sequel. He's not going to do this. He's not going to do that. And then he gets struck by a good idea. And I think what I have here is a really good idea for him. It's not about things that, he can't tap into. It's about things that he can. It's about what if Holden had to deal with his own sexuality. And I think that Kevin Smith can collaborate with people and can find that, can make that a really good movie. And I don't see the scene in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, as an ending. I see it as something that can lead to something else. But Red State, like I said, it's a really good movie, but it's very singular. It's basically, he had something to say about the Woodsboro Baptist Church. He said it, and what really stands out in that movie is Michael Park's performance as this guy who is this, horribly bigoted guy, and he leads his church into ruin. There's a shootout. He ends up in prison at the end. And I don't see that Kevin Smith has more to add to that. I feel like that movie, especially with the passing of Michael Parks, said what it had to say, but there's always something more that the Askewniverse characters can do. There's always more places those characters can go. It's the ongoing saga that he's always done.
You're not necessarily wrong that there are more places that the Askewniverse characters can go. The Library of Congress has Chasing Amy in it for a reason. It's a great movie. It is problematic and does not hold up well when held up against the test of time. Again, I will just like to point out the fact that he already said that he is not the right voice for it. The fact that Alyssa says the same thing, or I'm sorry, Joey Lauren-Adams says the same thing in Reboot, that it's never a story that should be told from a cis white male's perspective because it's a story about a lesbian, should really bring that in. Even if we're going to go ahead and replace Michael Parks in my movie, let me shoot you a pitch right off the cuff. Michael Parks goes to prison. Guess what? There are a lot of religious fanatics in prison. You know what you can do with that? Manipulate them. You have an entire story right there, but your story has been told. There is no banking. There is no love triangle between them anymore. Banky and Holden have parted ways, and they will never talk again. And it's because of what happened. But
what if they did? But what if the time has passed? The water is under the bridge. And look, this isn't him telling.
He cheated him out
of
millions of dollars in Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back. You're not going to forgive that. You're just not going to forgive that.
I think that he loves him. I think that
he doesn't love him enough to forgive him cheating him out of millions of dollars.
I think that he will, and it'll be very interesting.
All right, that's time. Now we're going to go on to closing arguments, and we're going to start with Jay on this one. Time begins when you begin speaking.
I honestly think that if you're going to remake Chasing Amy, or I'm sorry, you're going to create a sequel to Chasing Amy, the thing that you don't do is just swap the gender of the homosexual individual in the film, because that's literally what my opponent has sat here and said. Yeah, there were some latent homosexual ideals between the two of them. One of them fucked the other one over, and then they haven't talked since, and it's been more than 20 years since they've spoken. I literally pitched you what could happen in my movie, even with replacing Michael Parks. This is a reason why my movie deserves to get a direct sequel versus a movie that got helped with a sequel from a movie that came out 25 years after the fact. I don't think that it really even coincides. I honestly believe that Red State is the one film that deserves a sequel against every other film in Kevin Smith's oeuvre, for lack of a better term, deserves a remake or a sequel.
All right, that's time. And we will start Jeremy's time when he begins speaking.
But what if he did forgive him? And what if those two guys did reconnect and we got that story? And I'm not saying that you just do a flip. I'm saying that you know, people have different sides to themselves. People have different sides to their sexuality. And I think that there was a lot of, you know, people trying to discover their own sexuality. Alyssa realizing that she could love a man in the original film, but in this one, people can have different things that they can explore in themselves. And I think that Kevin Smith can tap into that. I don't think that would be wrong. And I think that because we've seen those characters over the years, that we have an attachment to those characters, that's something to explore. I think that the continuing relationship with his daughter and where that can go and how she can actually school him on some stuff because she's of the younger generation would be really funny and would be really true to what Kevin Smith's going through. Red State, like I said, that story, you can't recast Michael Parks. You would never want to do that. And he gave that story what it was. He said his piece. He doesn't really have more to say on the religion issue of that.
That's time. Great. All right. So we're going to drop the competitors out. Great job, guys. I'm going to bring out the judge. Let's start with Sean this time. You know, so who'd you vote for? What's the point that sold you? Keep it around 30 seconds. And you're muted.
I'm going to go with Jay. I loved his pitch for Red State 2. The idea of even Michael Parks, his character going to prison, recruiting a bunch of religious fanatics and whatnot. I think that was great. And I think the point that really hammered it home was there's a reason why Chasing Amy is actually like, I can't remember where he said it was held in, but basically it's a film that's widely regarded to be, you know, an absolute classic. And so I just think that he was spot on with pretty well the whole argument.
All right. So now we're going to go into John. You know, who'd you vote for? What was the point that sold you? And keep it around 30 seconds.
I think the insular point that basically you did get an encapsulated version of what would happen in that movie in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is kind of like a death blow to Jeremy's argument. And I am pissed that nobody picked Zack and Miri Make a Porno, but I will go with Jay on this one.
And your winner. Jay Burnz. All right.
Shout out Getty Images.
All right. Yeah, that was a great match, man. You knocked out there. You got a KO. How's that feel?
Never expected that to happen. I thought we were going to go into at least round 3 tied, and then I would have had to use probably the worst question that has ever been asked to me ever.
Okay.
And I would have lost it, and we would have gone to the speed round. Like a majority of my questions have gone to the speed round, or a majority of my matches have gone to the speed round. Jeremy had some incredible arguments. I was just able to talk a little bit better and hit some more points. But I'm still a little flabbergasted by the fact that I was able to actually pull the W out here. Jeremy did an amazing job. I'm not gonna lie, I said it before. I would watch the State of the Union directed by Denzel. That last question, that Kevin Smith question, was one of those ones where like it actually made me think about the movie that Kevin Smith has made that doesn't have a direct sequel that deserves a direct sequel. It's one of those ones that made me think because there's a lot there, and I don't think that Chasing Amy is a bad choice. I just think that there's been too much said by him in the media for it to be the correct choice. Whereas Jeremy's right, you can't replace Michael Parks. Michael Parks as Eamon in that movie fucking sells it. Like I said, he is probably the most villainous and most terrifying villain who doesn't have a superpower that I've seen in the 2010s. This was great. I appreciate everybody for showing up. I appreciate Jeremy for showing up. I appreciate the ability to sit here and give my opinions on stupid questions in a format where I don't have to be like, oh no, I have 18 wrong answers to questions in a row. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting because like Jeremy's not a player that you're generally just going to knock out like that.
Right.
You know, it just so happens that that's just kind of how things worked out, you know, with, you know, how you guys debated, how the judging went, and just sometimes it happens that way. I got knocked out once, and I didn't feel like I played a knockout type of match, and yet I still got knocked out. So it's just sometimes it's just how it works.
Joe did it to me.
Yeah, and he did it to me. So
Joe did it
somebody
to me.
needs
It didn't feel great, so I know that Jeremy's not feeling the best. But Jeremy showed
Absolutely.
up, and he put his heart and fucking soul into this, and I appreciate him for that.
Yeah, I need to see the person that's actually going to be able to like take Joe on for real and just like
Oh, if I actually studied for Joe, I could probably take Joe on.
Nice. All right. So I'm going to get into this. All right. So Jay's next match will be the #1 contenders match against Aaron Canole. How are you feeling about that one?
I talk to that boy on like a weekly basis. He stutters so much, I'll be fine.
All right. All right. Yeah. Well, if that's all the thoughts that you have, I'm gonna go ahead
Also,
and
no, I
Yeah.
have one more thought,
All
and
right.
it just seems a little weird to me that the commissioner of this league has put himself into a #1 contender shot. So I'm gonna just say that. I'm gonna leave it at that. But yeah.
All right. Shots fired there, I guess. This is going to be a fun match to watch, I guess. Maybe I'll try to get in and judge that one or host it or something because that sounds like really fun. All right, I'm going to drop you to the back. Congrats on your win, Jay. Bring out Jeremy. How's it going, Jeremy? How are you feeling about your performance on this one?
Not good. Feeling pretty dispirited, actually. And yeah, it's just one of those things where at the moment, like I never want to play again. And I often feel like that after a bad loss. But thankfully, I already agreed to Aaron to play in an upcoming summer tournament. So it's like I can't back out on that now. So no matter how I'm feeling now, I've got to try to, do a better job the next time and make up for my lackluster performance today. But yeah, don't feel good.
Yeah, Jeremy, I got to tell you, I've been in the same exact position you're in right now. It wasn't against Jay, it was against Joe, but still two great competitors. You lost against one